my name is Michael John McCarthy, or MJ for short, and I'm a composer and musician. I mostly work in theatre. I compose music for plays, and I play guitar was my first instrument, but I also play a little bit of piano accordion, like Irish traditional music on the piano accordion.
My name is Dean and I play the saxophone. Wait!
I'm Ray. I am a songwriter and a guitarist, and I also play the violin, the piano, synthesizers. I work a lot with like drum machines and synths. I teach a bit as well, but mostly work in like production, songwriting and gigging, play live a lot.
Well, I think we're going to start with how we all sort of got started in music and how we found our feet. I didn't start playing saxophone until I was 14 in high school. None of my family are musical at all. So I came from a very sort of working class background. My dad's a plasterer and my mum's a nurse. And they were like, what the hell is this boy doing, wanting to be a musician? So random. But they love it.
I taught myself the guitar, but I started playing violin and piano when I was really, really young. I don't even remember a time when I didn't play music. So quite different to you in that like my family was very musical, so I would play with them. But I did learn really like young that music is just like a really social thing. Like we did it for fun. It wasn't about like performing. It was just like my family would have parties and like someone would be playing the fiddle, someone would be playing the guitar. I'd get to stay up really late if I was playing the fiddle, so I think maybe that's why I got into it a bit, because I'd be like, I want to stay up and like be cool and hang out with the grown-ups. And then when I first heard like punk bands, I was like, okay, I want to play electric guitar and I want to turn it up really loud. And so yeah, I just like, someone lent me their guitar. The good thing about the guitar is that there's so many in the world, like people just have guitars, and I feel like you don't necessarily need to buy one. So, like if you ask around enough, someone will be like, oh yeah, I've got a guitar that I don't play.
And how about you?
I grew up in a really rural part of Ireland, right down the south of Ireland, and neither of my parents had finished secondary school, so I was the first person in my family to finish secondary school. It was a really small school. There was no music teacher in the school, but there was a nun who could play guitar. And I got 6 weeks of guitar lessons from this nun, from Sister Patricia. And after about 6 weeks, I learned a chord that she hadn't seen before. And she's like, you've reached the limits of my knowledge. Go for it. So then, similar to Ray, pretty much everything from then, which was about age 15, is self-taught. And the one thing I did do was I just listened to music all of the time, as many different kinds as I got my hands on. I listened and listened and listened. And I did go to university. I again, was the first person sort of from my wider family to get to do that. So by the time I finished my degree, I had found some friends, made a band, recorded an album, toured around Ireland, and also been involved in a lot of plays actually. And right towards the end of that time, I got asked to make music for a play, and I was like, oh, people are paying me to make music for a play, which was not something I even thought was a thing that could happen.
Do you always get nervous when you go about to go on stage or like you're doing a song? Or...
It reached the point where I was sort of regularly gigging with a band for about 6 or 7 years, and fairly quickly I got to the point where I was just did it, was confident about it. But then there was a gap of like almost 10 years where I didn't go on stage as a musician in a band, and we had a show last year, and before that show I was like properly, because I think I'd had so much time away from it.
After lockdown, I really struggled performing actually, to the extent where I got mega anxiety and stage fright,
yeah.
And I actually had to go to therapy, hypnotic therapy, I think is what it's called, to try and like make me realise that it's not that scary and it's...
Did it work?
Yeah. After that, I went and done a concerto with the Royal Scottish National Orchestra, and since doing that, I've been like, I have no fear at all. So you work a lot with theatre and all these different art forms.
Yeah.
How do you feel like that expresses your musicality and how you like feel gratified from that?
I suppose for me, music started like in my bedroom. There were two things I think of as like my first, I think the first sort of creative act I did as a musician was I made mixtapes. And then the other thing I did was, as soon as I had a few chords, was I started writing songs. I wrote about 120 songs between the ages of 15 and 18. They were terrible. But I got to about like song 120, and then I was like, okay, I think I can finally share this with someone else. And I took it to an open mic, and people thought it was good. And I think there's something, I don't know if you've had that moment, but that step where you go, I'm going to take this out of my bedroom, and I'm going to take that risk of sharing it with, could be friends or with an audience or whatever.
It's really funny you saying you'd written 120,000 songs.
Yeah.
Like I had, as soon as I'd written a song, I was like, right, when's the gig? Like, and I'd literally only just learned to play guitar as well. I always say like,
brilliant.
I learned to play on stage.
Yeah,
I was really impatient,
Yeah.
like maybe a bit overconfident, maybe a bit precocious. But I just was like so excited about being in a band and also like playing with my friends and like empowering each other.
I'm like classically trained. I went to a classical institution where this is right, this is wrong. But now, as I'm like sort of leaving that, I'm like, oh well, music is not about being right or wrong. Music is being about expressive or being creative or being wrong and like getting it wrong and messing up and then thinking how we can make it better.
Yeah.
That's what I like about it.
See, like the music you play, would it be the same as the music you listen to in your free time?
I think I go through phases actually myself so at the moment I'm listening to a lot of jazz, actually, a lot of Keith Jarrett. He's a improvising piano player, amazing piano player. I couldn't play what he plays in a million years. I wouldn't even begin to try it. But there's something, it takes me somewhere else, and it's very different to what I'm doing for work. So at the moment, there's something about what I'm listening to that's very, very different from what I'm playing and working on. That's really helpful.
I actually have been working a lot with a heavy metal band. I don't know why I just done that.
You have to.
I've been doing a lot of work with like a heavy metal band. So much work where like we've done tours of Europe over the past few months, and I would have never have thought about listening to heavy metal in my life. I just did not get it, did not understand it. But now I'm like, oh, this is actually quite interesting music. Yeah. But I'm also right now obsessed with trad music and traditional music. Like it's constant on my Spotify right now. And I would love to be like the pioneer trad sax player.
Yeah, I think that's a really interesting question, because I feel like when I started out playing guitar, I would only listen to like, I was really, really into punk and like wanted everything to be really noisy, that I listened to loads of guitar music. And I think that is a really good way to start. Like if the first thing you do is just listen to loads of music, you're going to be, like it's going to really help you learn an instrument, really help your confidence as well, because you can be like looking up to other bands that you want to sound like. So I think that's like a really, really good point to start. But actually, after having toured in guitar bands, sometimes, like for years, I'm just like, I'm so sick of this music. So like, I feel like, after touring for years and years and years, I got really into pop. And actually, mostly on my Spotify is like chart pop, which sounds nothing like what I do on guitar. But actually, since doing the solo thing, I've started to like try and write pop songs. So I'm like, maybe, and making beats, like it's kind of like, I found a middle ground. But
Nice.
Yeah, I was just thinking what you think your benefits from collaborating with other musicians have been, what the benefits of that, whether there's been any conflict through that, or...
Even though I knew I genuinely didn't know what I was doing, like there was this sort of like hush, because I was on stage. I was like, I'm on stage, you guys are in the audience. I kind of have the power right now. Even though it might feel scary or vulnerable, it's like, it is powerful.
Yeah.
And I think like as someone that, didn't feel that power growing up, like, and often felt, I was often the only brown person in the room. And like, I often felt like quite like a weirdo at school. So like, it wasn't till that point when I left school and I started playing in bands, I was like, I have the power now. Like, how cool is that?
I remember one of the musicians was a classically trained violin player. He's like, you're not supposed to put that chord next to that chord. It's like, well, that's what I've done. And then they were kind of, oh, no, actually, that sounds good. It sounds cool. And I think it gave me confidence, actually, that, because I think one of the things that other friends of mine have certainly spoken about is this idea of imposter syndrome, that when you start making work professionally, this idea that somehow everyone else knows what they're doing and you're the only one in the situation who hasn't a clue what's going on. And in my experience, 9 times out of 10, 9 people out of 10 don't have a clue what's going on in any given situation. We are all finding it out in the moment of doing it. And I think that's one of the things I've really learned from collaboration, is kind of going, oh, actually, the moment we get into the room, none of us know exactly what's going to happen, but we figure it out.
Yeah.
And I think that's one of the biggest skills, I think, as a musician and as a creative and a freelancer, is growing that confidence that you will figure it out, even if in the moment of saying yes to a gig or a job or something that you kind of go, oh, I don't know if I can do this, that you will, that you'll figure it out. And I think a huge amount of that is about trusting actually the people that you're in the collaboration with.
This was really useful because although they all come from different backgrounds, or they're all connected through music, like although they've went through life without knowing each other, they all have one thing in common, and that's music.
The confidence that they took to do things, to go to different places by themselves and learn more stuff, found that interesting, and yeah, just finding a passion.
They just really told us a lot about themselves and how they felt and how they grew up and how it brought them into who they are today. And it was just really good to learn about that, learn about people's different backgrounds and how they ended up all doing the same thing.
I do feel quite inspired that I want to be like them and do stuff like that.
I feel like music just makes you feel happy. Like, when you're sad, it makes you feel better. When you're happy, it makes you feel better as well. It's just a way to make you feel better, I think.